Micheál, and good afternoon, Liz, and thank you for your presentation. I think what you've managed to do is almost let us feel what it was like at that time, you know, and the pressure and, you know, in the days leading up to the 10th of April 1998. And it reminded me of having a phone call with Caoimhín Ó Céallainn, and he was there that time as well. And I was talking about, I think it was the Holy Thursday evening, and he was very despondent. So even the day before, he thought, this is not going to go anywhere, and thankfully it did. And okay, it was only a starting point, as you said, but it was a good starting point, and it has led to peace for all of those years. And to me, the 25 years, I don't know where they've gone. They've just gone so fast. But I suppose, just to get your opinion on something, the Dublin government's a co-guarantor of the Good Friday Agreement with the British government. And do you feel they've done enough to protect citizens' rights in the North? Like, could there have been maybe citizens' assemblies or other vehicles used to kind of, you know, discuss issues like that and ensure the protection of citizens' rights? And just an issue that is concerning to a lot of us here is the British government's legacy legislation that they've introduced recently, and it's opposed by every party on the island of Ireland, and there were serious concerns raised by Amnesty International, who appeared before the committee here recently, and they've actually called on the government to take a case against the British government because this is in breach of the Good Friday Agreement. And I mean, at the time, members of families appeared with Amnesty International and told the stories of how they lost family members to security forces in the North, and they've just never got answers to that, and how the pain is still there. Even though some of these happened in the 70s, it was very evident the pain was still there. They never got proper answers, and they feel now that they never will if this legacy legislation goes through. So just asking for your opinion on that, please.
Well, I support the opposition to this legacy legislation because the amount of people that died on both sides, on all sides, the fact that they're being denied justice isn't right, and it was never what we had in mind. Nobody proposed amnesties. We had early prisoner releases, but we didn't at any stage propose amnesties. I remember thinking at the time of the prisoner release thing, I thought there would be much more opposition to prisoner release, in fact, but we knew that we couldn't have had an agreement if we didn't have an agreement that allowed prisoners who were serving time for being involved in the conflict to be released, because they were, well, represented in the talks by the Loyalist parties and by Sinn Féin. The prisoners were very, very cogent and real a part of the negotiations that they should be released. I thought there would be more opposition to that, but in fact, in the end, it was seen as fair that people should have early release for the sake of the agreement. I mean, we were dealing with the release of prisoners was a huge thing in my head as a lawyer to actually, you know, to unravel justice that had been given by the courts. But these are the things we had to absorb, and we had to say this, okay, it's worth it for the sake of peace that we have an early release programme of prisoners. And so sometimes I think the things that were huge in people's minds at the time ended up being accepted quite easily in the end. But the legacy legislation, it's opposed by all the parties. It's opposed by the Irish government as well, and I would support that. I would support that position. I was glad to see that the Omagh bombing, that the British government announced an inquiry, a full judicial inquiry into that. That fell outside the legislation, of course, but because I remember that time in Omagh, I had passed through Omagh the previous day on my way back from Donegal. I was coming down to a christening in Dublin. The previous day was a roasting hot day and very good weather in August, and there was very little security in Omagh that day because with demilitarisation everything had been relaxed because it was 4 months after the agreement. So I remember thinking, you know, there was children wandering around eating ice cream, sitting on walls, and it was such a shock to everybody when that happened. You know, it broke my heart actually at the time. because we felt that we had lulled people into a sense of security in these towns because the demilitarisation had stopped. It had started, and there wasn't the security that had been in Omagh for years. So then this bomb happened, which was heartbreaking. So I'm glad that there's going to be a full investigation into how that could have been handled better. And sadly, the victims have had very little justice over the years arising from the Omagh bombing. So that's my view on the legacy legislation. I oppose it, and I think the British government are just trying to protect their own security forces.